38th Annual Southern African Transport Conference, SATC, kicks off today at the CSIR International Convention Center in Pretoria, Botswana. Now, the conference is supported by the Department of Transport and Transportation Research Board of the United States of America. It will end on Thursday. The event is set to provide a platform for national and international dialogues on transport. Well, what will be on the agenda? What do they hope to achieve? To tell us more about this is Professor Wynand Steyn from the University of Pretoria. He is a member of the organizing committee of this conference. Prof, good morning and thank you very much for coming in.
Good morning, Dan. Thank you very much for the opportunity. We really appreciate it.
38 years has been on the go. That goes back to 1981, I think.
That's correct. A number of years.
That's been alive for as long as the SADC body has been around, for what I recall.
That's about right.
From that time, yeah? Yes. And this thing is still going on. I guess today's challenges are completely different than when it was born or started 38 years ago.
Well, it's actually quite interesting. I had a call 2 months ago from an engineer in Florida, in the US. He was looking for a paper that he presented in 1990 at SATC. We could locate it within about a day because we've got the whole repository of all the papers about bridge construction technology that they are starting up over there. So I think the important thing is, although life has changed, 38 years ago we didn't have cell phones, but we still had to move, we had to be transported. And a lot of the principles remain the same. Obviously a lot of stuff is changing. And that's what we are focusing on.
Okay, now this year, 2019, what is the main focus here? I understand it's all about disruptive technologies. We live in that world of the fourth industrial revolution.
Quite true. We are looking at certain technologies, how they change the way that we transport people, transport goods, how we do the construction and maintenance on roads. Because normally we think about disruptive technologies as everything that links to a cell phone. Uber, everything we can order stuff, that's disruptive. And that's quite true, but a disruptive technology should change the life of society. Otherwise, there's no benefit in it. So some of the disruptive technologies that we are evaluating is looking at additives to road materials to save water when we construct a road. Significant amount of water. Now you can say, why is that disruptive? If I'm living in a rural town and I don't have a good road, and this new technology can allow engineers to construct a more economical road to my town, that's disruptive for me because suddenly I've got access. And I think that's the way that we look at it. It's not only the smartphone, sexy type of app disruptions, it's also the ones that changes infrastructure.
When I see the word CSIR, I think research. Yeah. So there's going to be a lot of research that's being presented, there's papers that are being prepared. But at the end of it, it's to become practical.
Yes,
it's not just doing research and studying for the sake of studying.
For sure. That's why disruption should always benefit society. So what happens with the outcome of the SATC papers and discussions, a report goes back to the Department of Transport, who have a look at all these outcomes, and they develop their new policies partly based on this, but also the 700 delegates that sits there. If you are a young delegate from somewhere in rural Limpopo and you hear about some of these technologies, you start to think about better ways of doing your job. And you start to look at ways of implementing this benefiting society.
Okay, safety still comes to mind. I mean, we live in this world of high-tech stuff in it, but in South Africa at least, I have no stats for other countries and really no sense of what's happening on the roads there, but our roads are killers.
I think I'm a road engineer, so I don't always like it if people say the roads are killers, although you're partly correct. I've driven on some roads, it's really bad. I think a major part of our safety problem in South Africa is an attitude problem.
So it's our behavior?
It's behavior.
Can technology help, do you think?
Technology can for sure help. There's a lot of the insurance companies, for instance, that's got these applications where they look at your behavior when you are driving. And you get rewarded in some way if you drive well, and if you don't drive well, your insurance premium doesn't look as good as the other guys. And you need those ways of incentivizing behavior, because if I don't change my behavior and I just drive at 200 kilometers an hour on highway, how are you stopping that?
Okay, we live in an age as well, I mean, as you say, where there's now autonomous vehicles, we're moving away from, was it fossil fuel driven, powered vehicles into electrical vehicles. So is that all kind of the world that you are looking at?
All of it is part of that, and the interesting thing again, to show how interactive things are. Electrical vehicles are wow, and we think about no more fuels, life is going to be clean. The problem is the black glue that we use to construct the surfacing of roads. That's bitumen. Bitumen is a byproduct of the fuel refining process. It comes from crude oil. So in a disruptive society, we as road construction engineers need to start to think, if we don't use that much crude oil and fuel anymore, our bitumen supplies is going to drop. How are we going to build the roads for these electrical vehicles to drive on? Looking at that, electrical and autonomous vehicles, they look for a good road to drive on. One of the very specific issues that we are focusing on in Africa, South Africa specifically for that, is how does an autonomous vehicle see a gravel road? Because they normally look for the lines, they look for the edges of the road. For you and I, if we drive on a gravel road, it's easy to see that's where the road stops and starts. For an autonomous vehicle, it's much more difficult, especially if there's another vehicle in front of you and there's dust. So there are really good challenges for us to solve in this world of disruptive technologies that we as engineers and researchers really have to focus on.
Yeah, there's more to talk about, but we've run out of time because you even think about maritime transport, you think about air transport.
Lots more.
All of those things are going to be
and
discussed.
Teaching our children to read and write and imagine. Because if they can imagine, they can think about new disruptive technologies. If they can't imagine, if they can't read and write, forget about it.
Thank you very much, Professor Wynand Steyn, one of the organizing committee members of this 38th annual Southern African Transport Conference that kicks off today in Pretoria at the CSIR International Convention Center.